Hi everyone, it's Cindy. Welcome back to Studioloo. So we're going to do some really simple crafting today and have a not so simple conversation. So let me get started. I'm making this video because a couple of people have asked for my input on this. I have made a video about this before called The Elephant in the Room. So let me sort of explain what I'm going to do and why I'm going to talk about this. So we have here the Awkward Family Photos book, which is full of exactly that, awkward family photos. You've probably, if you've been on the internet a while, you've probably seen these kind of things. So I'm going to make some really funny, simple little greetings that I'm going to add words to and that sort of thing eventually. But I just need to do something relatively mindless to be able to actually talk about what I want to talk about. So I think it was probably sometime last year. I'm not 100% sure when. I did not check before the video because I'm me. So I made a video called The Elephant in the Room, and it was about AI usage. And so, I've had a lot of conversations over the last couple years about AI, and I've also, embarked upon, I already completed a thesis on essentially the ethics of AI in the creative and art space. And that's not what I'm going to read to you today because, believe it or not, in 1 year's time, almost all of my feelings have changed. But like with any kind of an evolving thing like technology, you are going to continue to evolve with it. Your feelings on it, how it plays a role in your life, all of those things will continue to evolve. If you're someone with an open mind and, you're willing to go on that kind of a journey. Not everybody is, and that's also absolutely okay. I have no expectations of anybody here. So I'm going to just kind of give a bit of a disclaimer before I get into my speech on this or what I want to share with you. Number one, I am absolutely no expert. I don't think anybody is really. It's just everyone has an opinion. Number two, I am not targeting any creator at all, be it physical creators, digital creators. I'm not speaking about the case of anyone at all. So if anything I say makes you think, I wonder if she's talking about that person, the answer is no, I'm not. I'm just generalizing here. So this chat is going to essentially be about how I feel and my study and my feelings on AI usage in the junk journal world. Sort of in the art world too, but I'm trying to make it a little specific to our space here in the junk journal world. So I think for me, why this is important, and if you've been around for a while, you'll know that I am someone who endeavors to be kind of an environmental person as much as possible. It's not easy. It's not easy for any of us in this world with, mass consumption. So AI to me is another kind of mass consumption. So I'll start with the ethical concerns. The number one concern I have is ecological, the water usage associated with AI. So in case you weren't aware, when you do a search and that AI model, you put in your keywords, that AI model now has to go out and search. And it's not doing just a Google search. It's doing a continuous sampling and searching in a database where it's pulling information, images, music, whatever it is that you're doing. It has to do work for you. And that work essentially causes a lot of heat, a lot of power consumption. And how do we address, power consumption problems? Well, we have to cool things down, and we do that with water. So I watched a video very recently about a town that is filled with people who live right near where Meta has their gigantic AI warehouse. So because of this warehouse, this town has almost no water. The water that comes out of their taps is quite disgusting, and it's a really hard situation. Like, those people are probably going to have to sell their house and move away from that space because there's just no water there, and you can't live that way for long. So, also overall, right, we thought bottled water was a problem. Well, imagine what the ongoing growth of AI is going to do. I think it's a very valid concern that a lot of us aren't really willing to face, like most things. That's why, many of us suffer from, head in the sand syndrome when it comes to things like AI usage or overconsumption or shopping at places that have bad ethics like Temu and Shein and all of those, large factory sweatshop kind of places, right? I think we have a lot of excuses. Well, it's affordable. Well, everyone else is doing it. Well, places like Amazon are selling from the same sellers. Yep, all true. However, I think when there's information available, like you're seeing, Shein workers basically wearing almost nothing, laying in factories, trying to sleep. They live inside these places. They just work constantly. It's creating essentially like wage slavery. So anyways, that is part one, the ethics. And the second ethical concern I have is obviously art theft. So the way that AI works, it's not just magically creating these images for you. When you use some kind of, there's a lot of ways that you can put prompts into an AI tool. You can be very general, like, blue cat walking on a beach. Blue cat walking on a beach. So that's kind of the basic level. When you are that basic, it's just going to source from everything everywhere. But then maybe you're going to say, blue cat walking on a beach in Van Gogh style, or Van Gogh. Then it's going to source everything it has associated with Van Gogh and your other prompts, the cat, the beach, etc. And suddenly you have a cat walking on a beach and starry night is in the sky, right? Very predictable. That's the thing about AI, is it's relatively easy to recognize right now, and it's very predictable. So, not always. It's getting better all the time, but I would say for me, that's how I see it, because I've been using it, working with it, investigating it, thinking about it, and seeing it now for at least 2 years. So why did this happen so fast, right? Why is this all of a sudden here and it's so prevalent and it's a problem? Well, easy answer is the power of tech billionaires. So I think regardless of your political leanings, we are all seeing right now the power of tech billionaires. I think that, the gears were getting in motion for the last year or so, but it wasn't until Donald Trump entered office, and this is, going to possibly make some people upset. However, I would ask you to just hold your politics for a minute and think, who did we see sitting in Donald Trump's presidential, welcome party, whatever Americans call that, when they inaugurate them or whatever. We saw Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, who, is now a huge player with Doge, in accessing everyone's personal information, technology, all of that kind of stuff. Like, information matters. It's one of the biggest selling things that we have right now. It's the new most, sought after thing. It's how things are marketed. It's how they're sold. Every corporation wants to know more about us. And, there are scary ends to that when it ends up in places like, ICE, all of a sudden, are you a citizen or aren't you? Or it ends up with your insurance company that maybe you had a health condition and now they have a reason to tell you it's a pre-existing condition. When we hear about things like 23andMe being up for sale, and then you think about, oh no, they have my genetic information. Who's it going to be sold to? So I say this because Trump is someone who, essentially represents himself as being very pro-business. And I would say the same is true around the world for the majority, if not all, conservative leaders as they lean further toward populism. And basically business comes before everything. It comes before the environment. It comes before human rights, social needs, all of it. It's business first, really. That's what we're seeing. So that being said, the political climate was perfect. So a lot of money has been injected into these tech companies. We saw, this weird situation with TikTok when Trump took power. It was going to be banned in the US and then it wasn't banned. And does anyone know why that changed? Like, I've seen a lot of rumors, but I've never seen a true statement that now Facebook owns TikTok in the US. I'm actually kind of suspicious because I know I've seen a lot of TikTok creators that say, hey, did anybody else notice that, you can now link your Facebook to your TikTok, or you're asked to log in with Facebook or validate with Facebook? So I don't know. This is just a theory to me because we don't have proof of that. But that being said, it's something to think about. So tech billionaires have had huge injections of money, and we know that, now they all have these gigantic warehouse type buildings in the desert or wherever it's a server farm. It's just generating constant usage, right? So that's why this happens so quickly. There's no one like a billionaire or a tech giant to push something into a market faster than a tech billionaire. Think about it. They've got the systems, the technology, the strategy people, the marketing people. If you work in technology today, you understand the feedback loop of business, right? I'm a product manager. I understand that a product begins with a concept, then, a build, a prototype, then a pilot, and you test it, you refine it, you productize it, you make the thing and you pilot it and you put it out there, and then you make it scalable and you put it in the market. That's how products work. So that is what we're now seeing. So the other thing that's going on, and I think it started with the work at home, mindset that we all had to have during pandemic lockdown. Now, of course, we're being punished for all of those years where we all turned our homes into our offices and essentially tried to keep our companies alive. And now we aren't being thanked at all for it. We're being told, get back to the office. You've had your fun. Get back to the office. Like, so many people are dealing with that. So many companies have taken a hard line. And a lot of them, tech billionaires. We heard that Twitter went through it with Elon Musk and his, X rules and all this stuff. I know that government employees in the United States are now going through it. And again, it's a nightmare because it's not the right way to be going about things. There's no reason we should all be sitting in these CO2 emitting cars for 2 extra hours a day, usually, to just do our job when we can work much more efficiently at home and not, cause such impact. But that kind of gives you the environment, right? We have this tech giant environment, they're angry, they want us back at work. We have a political environment in the United States that's also kind of a hostile government takeover, like the song. It's like they're hostile. They're upset that they weren't in power for the last while. So they're going to push everything that they want as fast and as far as possible. And, not a unique situation, not the first time it's happened, but certainly one of the most prevalent, I would say, that I've ever seen in my lifetime. So then, the next thing is, because this is the tech giants at places like Google, what do we use every day? Pretty much browsers, right? How many days do you go through and you don't use your phone, your computer, some smart device? Have you noticed that literally every device connected to the internet now has AI? So when you do a Google search, the very first set of results that you see at the top of your phone screen or your computer screen are the AI generated results from, it could be Microsoft, it could be Google, it all depends, on what systems, solutions you use. So there you are using AI, and actually you have no choice in the matter. So that search I told you about, that's going to use some water, it's going to do that, you have no choice. And I just the owner of ChatGPT recently put out this whole, video and statement about how people saying thank you to ChatGPT on a daily basis is costing them billions of dollars, and how much water it's using. So they're saying, stop saying thank you to ChatGPT. But, that is a drop in the bucket. That is nothing. When you think about, I've been sitting here for the last hour having ChatGPT, write a business thing for me or a school thing. I know educators are beyond frustrated trying to find out how to keep up with people cheating using AI. I honestly cannot imagine what that must be like. So now you're using it and you have no choice, and it's everywhere. I was shocked when it showed up in my Bird Buddy, my smart bird feeder that I love. I noticed, really quickly that all of a sudden they have their own AI bird identification, feature. And actually it did not make the Bird Buddy better at all. The identification got much worse than whatever they were using before. And I'd say they've been using AI now for about a year, and it's just as bad. I still think it's bad. So that's the thing. You have no choice. So now I will move on to the chapter, who was hurt first when all of this happened. So the first people who were hurt were designers. From corporate designers who do corporate logos, schemes, marketing, advertising, design work for slicks, for sales, for commercials, television, radio, video is now a very huge environment for AI. You probably have seen all the creepy videos of a frog melting into a sweater and all these weird things going on. The thing is that there are more pay to play refined tools that make better quality kind of video, like everything. AI music, did you hear a song about junk journaling recently? Do you think that someone actually made that song, or was it an AI song? You'll probably find it was the latter, because there aren't a lot of country singers or rock singers or whatever the theme was making music specifically about things like, junk journaling, tearing paper, inking. You think of the uniqueness of what we do, cutting paper and this kind of thing. No one is singing about that, really. Unless it's there's someone being hired to do so, which I don't really see that anybody would be doing that. But anyways, so the first people were hurt were the designers. And in our world, that extends to, yes, the digital kit creators. So Etsy being the number one place where, people go to look for digital work in order to, make junk journals. You want a digital kit, you want to make a sunflower journal. You go and you look for sunflower digital journal kit. So now the Etsy algorithm has, basically full control over what happens on Etsy and what gets shown to you as the consumer. So there's a bunch of things that go into the algorithm on Etsy, okay? As an Etsy seller, I have to make sure my photography is good. If I offer free shipping with sales over $30, I'll get higher in the algorithm. If I have a good rating as a seller, I get higher in the algorithm. If my photos are good, if I add videos, if I do this and I do that and I dot, all of their boxes, then I get a higher and higher rating. However, this is where we start to think about content farms, bot farms. A lot of these come out of places like Russia, but also China, India, essentially third world countries, or countries that are struggling, that are trying to find enterprise to make more money. There's reasons for this, and this is one of the capitalist society realities here, that not everybody can afford to be ethical. It's just the truth. It goes back to that whole, here's why I buy from Temu. There's a lot of things to think about. It is not black and white, this issue. So what happens is, here is let's pretend this little vintage naughty book is my listing. So what happens is, here I am, I released my listing. Well, when you searched for sunflower, you got this. And all of these pictures represent an AI kit. and then there's mine, but mine's probably down here actually. It's probably like this. So, you know, what this has done is it's made a lot of people who do design work for digital kits say, what's the point? I can't even compete. All of the benefit of Etsy advertising for me is now gone because I am 1 in 100 and I'm not at the top. You know, it's really difficult. So the thing about content farms, AI, you know, content farms, is that they pump out daily content, you know, so you can't keep up with the number of listings. It's like, you know, impossible to compete with that. So, you know, today you're at the top, but tomorrow when 10 more listings come out, you're not at the top. And then every day it gets worse and worse. You know, if you haven't looked on Etsy for a digital kit lately, you will see that when you do, you know, there is a ton of things that look very much like they're all the same or they're all AI generated. And chances are a lot of them have the same graphics because they all use the same tools. And the thing about AI is that everything you create lives in a database online, and other people do have access to it, so they can also use it. So that brings me a little bit to why I wanted to talk about this. Copyright. I watched the wonderful and thoughtful video that was made by Joey DeFee this past week about copyright in the junk journal world. And so I read the comments. I sort of give her kudos for taking on that topic because that's another monster of a topic. And I started to see the comments where, you know, some of the creators that she mentioned are AI creators. And so people were saying, you know, it's rich that there's copyright on these because, like, they don't even own them. And that's the truth. With AI, there is no such thing as copyright. And we've now actually reached a time where these things are getting challenged and the AI creators are not winning. They are not able to retain their copyright. They can't prove any of the work is, you know, actually their own. So, I mean, if you're a book illustrator, or if you're a book writer, an author, I'd be very careful if you're choosing illustrations done by AI. That is probably the worst way to go about it, because you spend all this time, you know, writing this book, and now you could lose your intellectual property because it's now attached to AI. So just kind of a warning there. But anyways, this takes me to kind of the next chapter, which is how to identify, how to think about, I've told you how to identify. I haven't told you how to identify AI. So the best way to identify AI is to just look at it. Look at the details, the eyes, the faces, the hands. Do they look like they're computer generated, or do they look, when you look closely, that they've been sketched or drawn? Now, you also have to have a little knowledge about digital art versus, you know, painterly, like, styled art that's done on paper, right? So, you know, it may be hard for some people, and as this gets more mature, it will be hard for everyone. You know, if you see, there's a couple things. If you see that, like, there are Etsy shops that are now offering you some kind of a behind-the-scenes subscription to all of their digital content, and they've got hundreds of kits that you now have access to, and they live somewhere on a Google Drive or a Dropbox, those are probably AI. If, you know, you see like a Santa Claus kit that's got 80 different images of Santa and they're all different, do you think that, you know, like, but they're similar? Like, it's going to be Santa's head, he's going to be facing a slightly different way, you know, but they're all really the same. Do you think someone would take the time to, like, either photograph, illustrate 80 of the same thing? Why? Or, like, if, you know, you're looking at a kit and it's got like 50 different styles in it, and you're like, wow, what is this artist's style? Like, it doesn't seem to have its own signature. Well, because it was generated in, you know, the, usually when you put some kind of set of words into an AI engine, it generates usually 4 mock-ups, all different. And so that's what they use. They just keep them as is. So the next thing that I want to talk about is the money question. So who is actually making money from this, and how much money? So again, I think it is like and I'm talking specifically about like the digital artist and the junk journal world. We know the tech billionaires are the ones making the money. They own the tools, right? Every time you use them, they're making money. You're paying for a subscription to their tool if you're buying Midjourney, or you're buying, I don't know, any of the other ones. It's like you're paying for something, right? So it's like a Netflix subscription. But in the junk journal world, I would say the people that are making the most money are the people who already established that they had a junk journal business. Either they're a YouTube creator and they have a large following, or they're a digital creator who has a design team or a YouTube channel and a large following, or they may have a relationship with a brand such as, 49 in Market or Stamperia. So, the other depressing part of this is AI is everywhere now on the physical products from all of our favorite creators, like the ones that I just mentioned, the companies I just mentioned. And, companies like there's like All in Create, like all the new ones that are coming in. I am seeing just an absolute ton of AI generated images, which means they are not hiring designers, right? They are not. And, I have no theories, but it's interesting. This year we learned that Tim Holtz is going to stop designing, and I don't know how, or I don't know why that is. It's none of my business, but it's an interesting topic, right? It's a point. So when we think about who's making money, I think it's those people, the same people who, they used to make their own digital kits, and then unfortunately now they've gone to using AI, and that's just what they've chosen. But I guess I would say those are the ones that make me the most sad, because there are so many awesome artists and designers who I've supported, who I love, that they have all the artistic and design ability. They really do. But now they're not using it anymore, and they're still generating these things, but it's not them anymore. So I'm not as interested. And I mean, that's just how I feel, right? You may like AI generated images. You may like specifically how they do AI. So that I'll talk about a little later, because there's basically the general way you can just generate AI and you use the image you get. But then there's other ways that you can use it. Paint overs and digital editing and mock-ups. And I mean, I'll get into it a little later. But the big thing I want to talk about also in the money question is subscription services. So I talked to you about how through Etsy you will see these listings like access my whole shop for $80 or $100, get access to all my stuff. So then that's that personal private model. But then there's the tools that we all know about. So the Digital Collage Club is now making and creating. They've changed their name. So they were someone who sold digital assets from vintage or, like Illustrator sources. They would do kits, that people would buy to make journals with. And, I think they have a relatively large following. They do have, design team and support on YouTube. And they're a subscription service. However, this past year, when they changed their name and they launched another side of their business, they now offer an AI tool service. So you can now access and use their AI tool, and you can access what other people in the community are making or what they release, and you can create your own stuff. You have to pay a separate subscription to get that. And the one thing I can give them credit for, though, is that they absolutely do identify the difference between vintage sourced artwork and AI. They call it AI assisted art. So they do have a label underneath every one of their kits that shows you what's what. So then, there's other sources like the Graphics Fairy. I haven't noticed that they've started to use AI, thankfully. I think they're just still doing what they're doing, and I'm actually thankful personally for that. I say thankful because that's what I'm looking for. That's what I want to be using in design work that I do that isn't my own stuff that I'm either drawing or scanning or whatever. So yeah, I think Graphics Fairy is still a safe space if you're not looking to get into AI. But the bigger concern in these subscription services actually hits all designers and illustrators right in the heart. And this is the space of design sources. So designers and artists are two unique individuals with different specialities and skill sets, but they're part of the same ecosystem, and that one feeds the other, and it's a back and forth situation. It's a flow. So there are people who are artists who actually are drawing, painting, sculpting, whatever you're doing. It is a tangible thing that you are doing. You are an artist. You can also be a digital artist, drawing on a computer with something like Procreate or Photoshop or, whatever you use. You're rendering your own images. And then there are designers who are interested in designing, let's say junk journal digital kits, but maybe they don't draw, they don't paint, they don't collage, but they want digital assets they can use on their computer to make these cool layered kits. You want a background, you want a midground, you want a foreground, you want to put stamp some text on top, you want to add a bird, whatever you want to do. You want to make that composition. That's you as a designer, right? So how do you do that? You need sources. And, Graphics Fairy is an excellent source. But, in the whole, before I started journaling, I have an art education and I also have a design education. And when I was taking web design and development, I learned all about all these different sources for getting digital assets, and Adobe Creative at the time was just getting kind of built. But now Adobe Creative is part of the Creative Cloud. Adobe, they bought up everything Macromedia owned. Now they're, Photoshop, all of the tools they have are subscription service only, right? So now, the unfortunate thing is that Adobe Creative has also turned to AI generation. And then if you've ever looked for an image because you've been trying to do something, let's say your mom loves flamingos, you want to make her a birthday card, you Googled, flamingo, or maybe you were looking for an image that had a white background, and maybe you learned that image is called a vector. So you Googled flamingo vector. So the first thing you're going to see are all of these different websites that sell. Some are free, but most of them sell, some kind of a graphic like pixelspot.com or whatever. I forget all the names right now of the different design houses that, have massive amounts of graphics. But if you go searching, you will see them. And usually you'll see, say, this image, but it will have, its watermark across it and the name of the company. So when you buy it, it takes that layer off and you have that image and you can use it by the terms that they've, given. So now the crummy thing is that in all of those sources, Adobe Creative, all of them, there's AI generated material. So here's the reality. As a designer, I can no longer guarantee to you that my kits and what I release does not include AI. Unless I have literally scanned vintage materials, I've illustrated everything, I've done everything myself. But let's talk about that. So can you imagine the time it takes to actually paint every single facet of an entire kit, right? So you think when you buy a kit, you want to have all these elements, pages, backgrounds, ephemera, blah, 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 all the things. So imagine if this was a kit. These were elements from a kit, but let's say they're not photographs, right? They're paintings. Do you know the time it would take to paint this glass of flowers in watercolor and these desserts, in acrylic and these flowers? And no, that would take an artist a crazy amount of time. And at that rate, they wouldn't be able to release, design enough to release enough art for designers to be able to design kits to keep up with any kind of a regular release schedule. And in order to be a recognized, designer who's doing junk journal kits, you want to be releasing something like roughly once a month if you can. It feeds a whole ecosystem. Maybe you have a Patreon and you sell your digitals there. Maybe you have an Etsy shop. However you get things in the market, if you're not there frequently, then you're not going to be popular. It's like making YouTube videos. If you're not there making them, your subscribers will go down. You won't rank as highly in the algorithm as you had, and so on. It's just, you're just simply not present. So, that's the whole thing about why this is hard, is we can't do it fast enough. Our design sources are tainted. And at the same time, these bot farms are fully, pumping out content continuously. So, it's not easy to do this. I have friends in the design world who have literally just said to me, I'm done. What's the point? There's no point. And it breaks my heart because I love their work. I love what they do, but I also get where they're coming from. It's demoralizing. We literally live in this weird society where we're just demoting ourselves. So the next part of this that I want to get to is, I think, an important one for right now, because I think we're on the precipice of this part. And I'm calling this chapter kind of, here comes the shame. So I'm worried right now about people and how they decide they're gonna, talk about this, and they're gonna identify you, they're gonna bust you, they're investigators, they're online sleuths, they're gonna nail you, and you've released a kit, and you've released some work, or you've made a journal and it has AI in it, and they're gonna make sure everyone knows about it. Because these are just people that exist in the world, right? They make it some kind of a personal battle to be right or something. And honestly, I think it's going to happen either way. I don't really understand the point, to be honest, because you're not going to win anything, really. You're not going to change anything, really. And I think you're also looking at the issue maybe as a very black and white issue. So the other concern I have is here on YouTube. So, as this starts to mature, there are many YouTube shame verticals, okay? So there's the reaction channels, the gossip channels. Drama gets views. I'm sure that this video, just because of the topic, is going to get more views. And I promise you, I didn't make it for that reason at all. But I know, I saw the views that Joey's video got on copyright. People are looking, they're interested in the topic, but they're also interested in your opinion and if you're going to try to burn anybody. So I'm not going to try to burn anybody. And please, if you have ever enjoyed me, if you are here because you have enjoyed something I did or something I've said, please still see me as the person that you saw then. I generally am talking about things because I care about them. I don't care if we disagree. I still care about you. I promise you. I still want you here. I still want to, have a community that's diverse. So all that being said, there are YouTube channels where there's the craft or art environment, and then they get connected to the drama environment. There's a crochet channel that I watch, and a few years ago actually, she started a channel that was about drama in the crochet community and the yarn community. And she does really great videos, but in some ways I'll admit that I feel it doesn't really serve the right kind of purpose. I think sometimes she does awesome work when she's she's calling out people who have done something really bad, like fraud or something, right? She's telling people, hey, this crochet product that's being sold is AI. It's not a real pattern. Don't buy it. That's another whole rabbit hole I can go into about all the people who are buying AI patterns for knitting, crochet, cross stitch. They buy them and then they realize it was generated by ChatGPT and it doesn't actually work or translate to the stitching that they were planning to do. And then they realize the photo is AI generated too, and they just got scammed out of money. So that being said, I think this is going to start to happen, and people are going to start to name and shame maybe those AI creators, those AI YouTubers, whatever. Will they even be right about what they find in their armchair investigation? who knows? But then, like, you know, the other side of it that I don't quite understand, but I think I do, because the risk is high. The question of why don't YouTubers and designers, especially those who get on YouTube and talk to their community, why don't they just identify that they use AI? Why don't they do that? Well, because there's a lot of reasons, right? There's reasons why you should do it, I think now, because it's getting normal to just put an AI tag on things. In fact, YouTube and Etsy both actually do require you to self-identify when you use AI. I don't think, you know, there's any way of forcing the issue right now, but will that change? Maybe. I also think, though, companies like Etsy, they know exactly what they're doing. Like, they're making a ton of money. I mean, it's why would they wreck a good thing for them, right? But then the thing I think about is just kind of, what's my reason? What's my why that I do a creative YouTube channel? There's a few. But the first one was, I thought, you know, I like to sit down and work on stuff. And I do like, you know, in my life, in my hobbies, and in my profession, I'm someone who likes to try to train people, teach people things. I love, you know, doing workshops and teaching kids and that kind of stuff. I like doing tutorials and sharing my knowledge with people and, you know, creating a whole community. And that's always been something I've been interested in since I was very young. I used to, in my early days on the internet, I would organize swap groups where we'd swap things like fridge magnets. And, you know, I have long-lasting friendships from all of those things from years ago. And so that's really a big why for me, is to have you here. And I think, you know, you get to know me because you hear me, you know, you're cooking breakfast or something, and, you know, I'm talking in the background while you're doing it. So it's like I've become a familiar voice, or whoever you like to listen to has become a familiar voice. And, you know, I think that, like, the thing with that is I look at the comments on YouTube a lot, especially when AI has been used and someone does like, you know, a sharing of their kit. And a lot of the times the comments are like, oh my gosh, I love how your art's amazing. I love how the colors you use, the detail on the wings of that butterfly are amazing. I love how you put this together. I love that, you know, the theme that you chose and how you did this and how you did that. It gets really, really worshipy and very in depth on the style and the choices and the technique, specifically the brush strokes, the hands, you know. And I think to myself, you know, every time I sit down and I read the lovely comments that you guys leave for me about things, you know, I feel honored, honestly, by what you say to me. And I think it would hit different if I knew that all of the comments I was left were basically compliments on my artistic practice. But actually, I don't have one. I did not just draw these wildflowers. What did I do? I typed large pink hibiscus with small flowers around it in a circle. That's what I did. And that's what I got. And you're like, oh my God, look how you painted these details on this flower. I love I always call this a proboscis. That's not the right, it's stamen. I can't remember. My brain isn't working right now. I'm talking about too many complex things. But yeah, it's, you know, I didn't do any of that. And when you tell me how much you love the details, I want those to be my details. And if they're not, I don't know. I don't know how to deal with that feeling. I think it sucks. Like, so yeah, there's that. So the next thing I want to talk about is, for me, kind of the crux of why this is not just a black and white issue. So I want to talk about some realities, okay? And these are only ones that I'm aware of. I'm sure there are many others. So I think we can all agree right now that for the majority of us, it is very difficult economic times. And families have been, you know, we have reached some deep level of capitalism here in society where we are in, you know, homes where two parents are working, trying to feed the family. You know, you're working long hours. Some people have multiple jobs, you know, and when COVID happened, a lot of people lost their jobs. You know, the political environment is causing many people to lose their jobs. The lean work environment has become so abusive, and people are trying to be as lean as possible with staffing. So a lot of people are doing things like side hustles. Side hustles have become a massive part of the world, right? Like people are driving Ubers, delivering food, you know, doing Fiverr, like, you know, doing gig economy work and trying to find ways, you know, you use your skills to find ways to bring more money into the home. Like that's another element for me of my business, making and selling my journals. Not so much digital kits because honestly, they don't fetch a lot of money. I'm not someone who's big enough to, you know, be selling hundreds of kits or something. I make them just because usually I like to use them in my book that I'm making, and I like to share them with, like, you know, people. I like to do, like, I you know, it's not a practice for me that I do super commonly, but mostly I like to work with vintage stuff anyways. I don't know, it's something that I don't see as like a part of my major, you know, reason or my major income. But anyways, for some people it is. So some people have actually used AI to pull themselves up out of poverty. Believe that or not. In fact, I know someone in the design world who has done that after losing their design job. I know another person who unfortunately had a horrible work injury, and she's no longer able to work. So she started making digital kits using AI. And then, you know, but the thing is, she didn't just generate the picture that she was given. She actually has spent the last 2 years learning all about journaling. And so I met her through, you know, she left me a comment on a YouTube video where she said that she really liked a technique that I did when I was doing a tutorial on like something relating to painting flowers. I think it was a flower painting video. And, you know, she was talking to me, and she sent me a couple messages, and we were talking about, you know, she's just getting into journaling because she was injured. She was at home for a long time. Anyways, it's not my story to tell, but, you know, she needed to try to find a way. She's a single mother, and she needed to find a way to generate some money. So like she saw this opportunity and she took it, and, you know, it didn't make her a fortune, but it did help her buy milk and bread. It did. Like, and, you know, I think when we gatekeep, when we say only the artist, only the pure artist should have the ability to work in this space, I think we're leaving people behind. Yeah, the ethical problems are still there, but like literally every other vertical of the world has them too. I'm not saying I'm pro or anti-AI. I'm saying I'm probably mostly anti-AI. I probably live in the 10% okay with it world, but it's a spectrum, and I think it will continue to change. So also, you know, what bothers me are we literally people, right? We're a society of people who are currently just demoting themselves. I was working the other day at my job to define a whole process. I was writing up, you know, this whole thing. Basically, it's a list of requirements for a system that I want to build. So my colleague said to me, oh, I'm doing the same thing, but I'm using ChatGPT. It's way faster, and it's going to do this and this and this and this for you. And then, you know, eventually the product manager job won't even exist. And she didn't laugh. She didn't guffaw. She wasn't horrified. She was neutral. It's like, it's almost just a reality, right? It's just something we're accepting. It's just, that's what it is. No sense in fighting it. I think that's, again, a very head in the sand perspective. I think you are allowed to say at your job, in your life, no, I don't want to do it that way. I am smarter than what you are generating with ChatGPT. Also, why is it legal to use it at work and illegal to use it in school? That's an interesting quandary, right? So, I don't know. It's a space that needs more thinking. Like, humans literally built technology to get ourselves out of the mines, out of the fields, and out of the physical labor that we didn't want to do, that we couldn't do, that we were unable to do. We created all of these things, computers, to help us. And now, what's going to happen? Are we just going to end up back in the mines? We're going to end up back, as just literally physical grunts. We become the oxen while the robots are the ones that get to take the vacations. It's like we live in a world where AI could be something amazing. It could be doing medical research. It could be the one going to all these bloody conference calls that we go to and taking notes for us while we, don't work 5 days a week at least, while we so that we can enjoy 2 days. But no, see, that can't exist when money is a concept, when capitalism is a concept. So I say, reject it at least a little bit. Think about it. Then I guess, the next thing that I want to talk about is this statement, you're just scared of AI. There were people just like you when the computer was invented. They're Luddites. They didn't want to use computers. Let me be the first to tell you, if you haven't heard it before, that AI is nothing at all like the invention of the computer or any other technology that we have ever seen before. It is different because it is sourcing us. It is when it is searching for art, when it is searching for music, when it is doing writing, it's using sampling from humans that have drawn and painted, composed and designed and, researched and had art educations and have masters and PhDs and all these topics, all these things. It's stealing from all of us. We had no consent in this. We were never asked, do you want your art, your music, your thoughts generating this? Everything you do today, if you have a Facebook account, you have an Instagram, anywhere you share anything about you, if you check the fine print, probably you have agreed that they're allowed to source your content and it is now feeding their AI engines. So, this is what happens when nobody cares, when nobody reads. It gets bigger and worse. So that being said, I don't think we can stop it, but I think when you don't say anything, we continue on a path of just accepting it. And what is that, right? So then the next chapter in this monolith of a video is what could it have been? What it could have been. AI. It could have been beautiful. It could have been something that we realized we can't use it constantly. Use it like you do light. Turn it off when you're not in the room. It could have been a database for consensual art, for sampling, similar to public domain libraries, the big galleries that share work that's in the public domain, like the Audubon birds. You now have access to them. Who gets excited every year when you learn that new stuff comes into the public domain and you can journal with it? It could have been a tool for artists to consensually upload their own work and create interesting mods. I'll admit, that's one thing I do. I actually, I can paint and draw and sketch and illustrate, and I have a lot of different styles I work in. I have an art degree. I have a background in the arts. However, I can't draw everything. I can't do every style. So sometimes I want a specific concept. If you've been here for a while, my journals, they sometimes really have a pretty unique concept if they're built on a story. So sometimes I can't draw what I want. So I try, and then, yes, I use AI models to do some modeling for me. I have access to such models through my work where I am, yes, required to use it. And I don't pay for the subscriptions to it. But I do use it for sampling from existing work. So if other people have, searched for, buttercup, the flower, I may use one of their buttercups for something because it's already a physical product now. It's a digital product that lives in the ether. They already use the water. It's there. But anyways, so that's the thing. It could have been this cool thing that we could use as artists and designers to create modeling. It could have also been a tool that would allow people to sell their work through AI. So maybe you really love Mark Ryden. You love him as an artist. So instead of just adding his name to your words and stealing his work without his permission, maybe Mark Ryden would have an AI library of references that he consensually drew mock-ups for. He put them in the tool, and now you source his work, and he knows, he's aware of what lives in the AI models. So let me conclude, I guess, with my own personal feelings. So, this is the part that I guess gets kind of personal, where I don't just sort of generalize and give you both sides. I believe that people can change and evolve over time, and that we should give them that opportunity. Talk about this. Do it in a non-judgmental way. People will generate kits and things, and then maybe later they might take them down. They might feel differently about them. They might change the way that they do things. They may realize that when they've taken this departure into AI, that actually they abandoned their own art. Don't prevent them from finding that, okay? Because I'm telling you, people still have value. This is not something that's going to make me hate anyone. But I think the thing is, everyone's going to have a different perspective on AI, and I can tell you there's no sense in hating people for it, but you always have the choice to spend your money the way that you want to. I'd say as you navigate this space, it's on you to try to educate yourself about what is AI, what is not AI. I would not go the route of trying to investigate people, blatantly asking them, throwing a YouTube comment, all those I wouldn't do that, because I'm telling you, these spaces are small, and the last thing that you want to do is, I guess hurt somebody in a way that it affects their ability to do what they do, or it gives you a reputation, or it gives them a reputation, or whatever. It's just bad blood. I think you have the ability to do the research. If you have a gut feeling, trust it, and don't spend your money there if that's how you want to go about this. I guess I can also say that this is not going to stop. And I don't know what that means. I don't know how we navigate it. We just have to be here. But like I said, talk about it. Reject it if you want to reject it. Don't just accept everything blindly. For whatever reason, a lot of society does that nowadays. But also know, there are ways of using AI as a tool without paying for it and without actually sourcing it. If you think there's already all of these images that other people have generated, the damage has been done. Now it's a product on a digital shelf in the world. That might change how you feel about using it. Searching in the search bars if you're looking for something. There are also many artists one topic I constantly watch on YouTube is how are artists using AI, but they're still artists. How are they working with AI? And there's so many fascinating cases out there that I could take another hour talking about, but I don't want to. Also, keep in mind, some of us are required to use it in our jobs. It's just the reality. We can't, I don't know about you, but I have a boss. So the other thing is, for me personally, I have used AI. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that there is no AI in anything I do. That is not true at all. Not at all. It is, I use it, I say, very, sparingly. And the most common way that I use it is I'm part of a concept art group, and we have just kind of this internal thing where we do concept art and we kind of help each other on personal projects. So we'll do mock-ups, and then we do these fun art challenges, and we kind of do painting over models that we've mocked up. Maybe I want an obese frog in pajamas holding a cup of tea with a pointy hat or something, and let's say I couldn't draw that. I do a mock-up of a sketch, and then I would literally paint on top of it, and it would allow me to kind of express something. One example for me is I needed to draw a mourning dove. I tried 50 million times to draw the beak of the mourning dove. And I, like, you know how they have that round part at the back, but then the beak kind of comes down, but then it's still kind of pointy. I could not do it. I tried and tried. And by the end of it, my watercolor paper had so many pencil and erase marks that I was like, I can't do this. So I literally generated the picture of a mourning dove's head. I cut out the beak in super large size, and I set it in front of me, and I sat down and I just kept drawing it, and I kind of sized it down. But you know, admittedly, I probably would have just printed it to the same size, cut the beak out and stuck it on my picture if I had to, if I had a deadline for a project I was trying to do. Like, there is no shame in, you know, tools. People have had tools immemorial. Like, I mean, it is, like, that is designers. That is design, right? So, like, if you, you know, if you understand that what you buy that's a design, that designer didn't draw all those things, right? So, I don't know. So, what I can say is I don't plan to be a heavy user of it, probably ever, and it will 100% never replace what I do with the vintage and the antique. I don't seek it out, and I am more obsessed with using up the physical products in our world, the things like this, where this is just, it's going to be here, like, especially if it's plastic. Like, you know, I do things like this, right? I take an old book and I take a plant and I laminate them together and I make these weird things and I use them because, like, I don't want that plastic to be in the environment forever, right? There's this tangible truth about everything we have. You know, all these things are going to be here for a certain amount of years. And the more we use them up, make them smaller, break them down, keep using them, the better we are. We don't need to keep generating new things. The other thing I could say is I would love to see more truth instead of silence. I would like to see no shame. I would like to see people being truthful, because I think people are being tricked and they're being lied to. And what I worry about the most is the personal cost on an artist's confidence. I think so many people are emerging artists. They're getting art educations. They're doing the things that keep us human. Art is human. Okay. I have very big trouble with the idea of using the term AI art, or AI artist. I don't validate that term personally, but that's my opinion. No such thing for me. But yeah, like, imagine being an up and coming artist and you're like, you know, you just did this big thing and you really want to sell it or present it or talk about it. But then, you know, you see a bunch of online design work or whatever. Maybe you're a designer or a marketer and you're like, oh, like, that's way more dynamic than what I did. But you don't even know it was generated by AI. No one drew that. No one designed that. You know, it was sourced from the masters. Maybe it has Michelangelo's hand on it. Maybe it has Andy Warhol's hand on it. You know, it's got all their hands on it because we're all in this one big mud puddle. Sorry, of course we're at the end of the video and my battery had to die. But anyways, it's been a little over an hour and I'm kind of done talking about this, but this probably won't be the last video, right? Like I said, we're going to continue to evolve. I would absolutely love your, you know, your thoughts. Like, let's keep it nice though. Let's keep it kind in the comments. Let's keep it, like, you know, calm, because I can't with anything but calm, and I won't keep anything but calm. So thank you though for listening. I hope that this is giving you some things to think about, some perspectives. It tells you a little bit about me, and how I feel about AI. And yes, that will allow you to form your opinion of me, my work, what I do. You know, I'm gonna do what I do, and I'm not going to worry too hard. I'm not going to, like, obsess too much, and I'm going to keep being true to who I am and what I'm doing. I'm not going to allow myself to be investigated. I'm not going to support other people being investigated. I'm not going to seek out AI. You know, I'm going to keep on supporting artists and holding artists up that I love. I'm going to keep buying art. I'm going to keep looking for those digital kits that are, like, you know, mostly vintage inspired and those kind of things I really enjoy. I'm going to keep just doing what I do. I'm going to buy what I like. I'm not going to think too hard about it. if it's AI or if it's not AI, you will see loads of not AI things and some AI things here. That's my personal stance on things. But yeah, thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you very soon. Bye for now.